a city council vote. And we believe that there will be a lot of folks coming to support or not support the body-worn camera process. And I believe policy questions will probably come up in that as well. And so there will be other opportunities to have input. We do know that we do a lot of forums, and sometimes they're well attended, sometimes they're not. Right now on our web, we have 465 comments on body-worn cameras right now. For a city of 608,000, that's not a lot generally, but if you look around other issues, that's more comments than we have most policies that we put forward.
You had mentioned earlier in the presentation that you had spoken with mental health groups in regards to some of the questions. What are some of the other agencies that you guys have spoken to, not just from the mental health perspective, but other groups that have been consulted on their implementation of body?
Well, we've looked at other body-worn programs in different states and within the state. We've asked other states and other municipalities that already have body-worn cameras up and running and take a look at their directives, their policies, and we've all asked them questions. How does that work? They made any changes, things like that. For instance, like one of the things is that one of the agents we were talking about what an officer can't do. He can't take and display that video to somebody else. But there was nothing written in the policy about taking a screenshot. And I go, well, they didn't think of that, but you know, it's like, so we don't necessarily want the officers taking a screenshot of the video either. So
I think your question though is whatever groups that we've talked to, right? So earlier this spring we talked to NAMI, National Alliance of the Mentally Ill, Multnomah County chapter. We had a private meeting with them, and that was at their request. We thought that was important to give them time with us alone to talk about the policy issues, because one of the things that you know, we are under a DOJ settlement agreement regarding the Port Police Bureau's treatment of the mentally ill. And so we thought it was important to have that conversation with them privately, because we also believe that body-worn cameras, and at that time the statute hadn't changed. We were in the process. It's going to capture people in sometimes their worst episode, and we want to know what their thoughts were on that, how could we use that, how would it help them, and what are the negatives of capturing someone having a mental health episode at 2nd and Burnside. And at that time we were very concerned that this would become public video, that we would have to release it. We didn't have the protections from the state at the time, and so we were worried what kind of effect would that have on their community if it ended up on YouTube. So we had that conversation early on. We've had independent conversations with the ACLU of Oregon. They worked with us on this bill, and we took in a lot of their considerations and thoughts of what they really wanted to see in that House bill. And I'm sure that they'll also mention and talk to us about public policy as well. We have met with Joanne Hardesty. We did a debate with her at the East Side City Club meeting. Joanne Hardesty is the president of the NAACP Portland chapter. She actually hosted the debate, and we had a conversation with her about policy implications, and I think that went really well. We've met with the Oregon Defense Attorneys as well. They helped craft 2571 with us, and kind of listened to what they had to say and concerns they would have in the video. And one of the things about policy is they want to know how it's going to get to their attorneys, because there's downstream costs. We're talking about Portland costs. Well, what if they have to have a server with all the video of their defendants? That's a cost to them, and how do we get it to them? And the string. So we have those conversations. And there have been a number of folks who have kind of emailed us. Portland Cop Watch, some of you are familiar with that group. I've been in email contact with them on a number of occasions. They have actually posted on our website their thoughts and concerns about body-worn cameras, and we've had those independent conversations. I've also talked with Jason Renaud. He is a local activist, I guess I'd call him that, for the mental health. He's looking out for their welfare. He has emailed me, and we've taken in his comments. We've emailed back and forth, because he has some concerns, and actually, quite frankly, not everybody is on the same sheet of music, even if you think they represent the same clientele or the same segment of our community. He had some thoughts that were different than NAMI's.
To that point, NAACP is kind of like rebuilding here, so they're trying to build up those constituents, urban league, in terms of communities, urban league has been long-standing in the community. Black community POF is kind of emerged as one of the more powerful groups in the city
Yeah, so I met with Michael Alexander before he left the Urban League earlier this year. He actually came to City Council and testified in support of body-worn cameras. He, like us, don't believe it's a panacea for rebuilding relationships with everybody. It is just one thing we got to do. Relationships are continual. You can't be in a marriage and just have a good relationship with your wife every 3 months, right? It's a continual relationship building process. And so there are some folks who believe body-worn cameras are all of a sudden going to be a panacea because it's going to provide transparency and everybody is going to love everybody and everything's going to work out. And quite frankly, we think this will shed some light on what police do on the street. We think it will help hold officers accountable when they need to be held accountable. But we also think it's going to show the community that we're doing the right thing most of the time. But that there's nothing in a body-worn camera policy or program that will substitute having good relationships with the community you serve. And that's kind of the whole idea of this community-based thing. Even if this isn't well attended, you're here, we're making ourselves available, and we're going to continue this conversation with our community. And some of it's via email, some of it's private one-on-ones, but it's important to us. We got to get this right. We got one chance here to really draft this policy. Yeah, it can be done again, but again, if you look at this, this has far-ranging impacts, and we're concerned, I've kind of said it before, that we may capture a video of someone at 22 years old acting out at 2nd and Burnside, and 10 years later, that person may be running for city council. And how does that impact them later on? Video is kind of forever, and whatever our policies are, we're retaining it, when we activate it, how we use it, it's long term, and we want to get it right.
I know I'm asking a lot of questions,
That's why we're here.
but one of the things that you guys put in place a couple years ago was just if you have an interaction with any community, they can request a card from you guys. Has there been any talk of, since now automatically or you may be filmed, just automatically giving somebody a card if you've had an interaction with them? Just
We haven't talked about it. It's something we could talk about, yeah, but anybody we have an interaction with can ask for a business card. I don't think having a camera on would change that. We haven't really discussed that, but that's certainly something we can think about. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if it's been covered, so I'll go again quickly. Here in this particular North Central area, and then we'll look at Portland vastly. What are we looking at as far as the numbers in police shootings and in this hard number to date as we speak?
Officer-involved shootings? Been very few this year. I don't know the actual number, but it's been very few.
I'm sorry?
I believe there have been 4, 2 resulting in death. All of them have involved white males. All of them have involved white males this year. But historically, there's been a disproportionate amount of officer-involved shootings involving black people, typically black males. But the majority of Portland police shootings tend to involve white males, but disproportionate to the population of black males.
And so the population being, if you want to say that?
The disproportionate shootings with black males, the overall population of people who are involved in officer-involved shootings are white. You can check out Portland Cop Watch for a list on that because
Yeah,
well,
Dan Hamlin keeps a running list on Portland Cop Watch. Yeah.
Again, can I just ask quickly,
Sure.
and if it's not relative again, let me know which meeting. How would you say then, fairly, if you can, relations are, if it's fair to ask, within the African-American community in this particular area? I'm asking for a reason because a lot of information, I want to be fair, and that's why, again, I apologize, I did all that I could to be here. Because what you hear on television, we know that, as you see with the video situation, it could be altered. People have different perceptions. In living within this community, being indigenous of this community since 1960, I'm extremely concerned, and I want to thank these young people for being here. You have no idea, thank you. And you all, officers, I want to thank you for being here. And it is less than fortunate that we don't have a greater capacity relative to community membership, but I would like to see us to find out why that might be. And because I've spoken to many people within the community, I'm just being honest, and people are expressing that they're afraid even to come to a meeting like this. You know, are you sure you want to go and say something that can be dangerous? I had to pray about it. And again, I apologize, that's not why
Sure.
I am
I
late.
understand
But
that.
I'm saying with that, if you have an innate fear that can be justified to a degree, can we not then, I believe if persons really did feel safe here, this room to be maximum capacity. And that's not some hypotheses coming from a dream vision that I would like. Fear is legitimate and it's less than fortunate because people react out of fear on both sides. So it's less than fortunate that this room.
I agree, 100%.
Okay, so you feel that?
But one thing
Thank
I do
you.
want to preface is we've had 3 meetings and the turnout has been just like this.
Why?
Except for one, we had like 60 at one.
Yeah, over in East Portland, but in
Okay.
Southwest Portland, we had the same amount of turnout as
Was
what we
it
did.
in East County specifically?
Yes, East County, 162nd Burnside had road
Yeah.
commission issues. Yeah.
So is that where we having when we look at it in this particular neighborhood, are the numbers down for shootings, period? Forget it, for shootings, period, in this particular area, important property, thank you, officer, for allowing me to think of that question, important period, just the shootings. Where is the most hot area, if you want to call it that, in Portland as we speak right now?
Well, are you talking about crime or are you talking about officers?
I'm talking about not just officers, just shooting. What I'm seeing on television, what really jumped me out to get out here, and I'm saying like 60-second, like the young man has said, or Burnside, and you're hearing these numbers and these different demographics. Somebody shot, twice on last night. We're hearing this. You sit down the street here and you're hearing the sirens. Is it the ambulance? The reality of, and then you're going to the morgue and you're seeing these families. So those are the real life and deaths that I'm referencing again in urgency as we speak tonight.
I agree.
So-
And as far as like where the shootings are happening in Portland, there's crime maps that'll show that data, but a lot of it's like in Southeast Portland, Northeast Portland.
I'm going to go ahead and digress because, again, I apologize for being late. But, for example, I was watching something approximately a few weeks ago, and Mayor Hill said something that just was so profound to me. When he said, one of the questions was about the crime numbers, et cetera, and he goes, well, the African-American male. He goes, well, numbers are actually going down. I won't quote him verbatim, but generally. Numbers are going down generally. We're looking at that. We have to apply many of the efforts. However, the African-American male in Portland, Oregon is in peril. Do you understand?
Yes, well,
That
I
has
know what you're saying.
penetrated my soul. And with that being said, then I thought, well, what is the follow-up to this acknowledgement, particularly from our mayor out of his mouth himself? So my brother asked me, he said, the question becomes then, with this acknowledgement in the numbers, per capita and the like, then what can we do about, and what are we doing about this African American in Portland, Oregon? When we look at it being the whitest state in the United States of America, so sad, and the demographic in numbers, something here is urgent and it's pressing. And as an African American, and this isn't a race car because it's not a game, the degree, I'm 55 years young, and should, if God bless me to live 155, if that's his will, or this night, it is simply be say this, the fact that we're here in this meeting.
I agree with what you're saying. I mean,
I'm
the young African male is something. There's a lot of violence, a lot of shootings, a lot of
But
young
when it's
African
been
males.
identified, you know what I'm saying? It's not an argument with you, and I don't mean to take on that tone. So again, I'm just simply saying it's out of that concern that he didn't say, well, the males in Oregon are in peril, the Latinas are in peril, the Russians are in peril, the Ukrainians are in peril. Everybody's in peril. He identified a specific a group of persons whom have historically in this city, state, United States, but let's bring it home, have been victimized and continue to be so without said to be, again, unjust actions, and is now identified in peril. In peril. Google it. And that is why something has to be done so that, again, it's very alarming.
It is very alarming.
I think to her point, she has a question, so I'm gonna let her
Okay.
go first.
Go ahead.
Because well, it's just in terms of the disproportionate everything in terms of black people in Portland. And there was a quote from Michelle Alexander, she's an author of the Jim Crow book, and she said, effectively, this can act as a between 30 and 100 for 2 years or forever. You were talking about who can have access to this activity, but we just joined the JTTF again, for example. So Joint Terrorism Task Force, that's where the Portland Police have 2 police officers that are working with the FBI to kind of combat terrorism. Terrorism plots locally and internationally should said thing break out. So would they possibly have access to these things under extreme cases, for example, or cases that the DOJ, JTTF have already deemed extreme in their criteria?
Well, you got a lot there, you're saying a lot there. First of all, is the DOJ watching a certain group of people? I don't know. I have no information about that. The DOJ hasn't shared anything like that with us. Whether they do or not, it's kind of, I don't know.
But not with the Port Police.
It's not with the
You're
Port
talking
Police
something
Bureau.
different.
Right, but I'm using that as an example.
But as far as like maybe with JTTF, for instance, Joint Terrorism Task Force, would they maybe have access to the video? Could they call us and say, hey, you have a video on this? If they're doing a criminal case, just like anything else we've done over the years, we share information and evidence with each other.
But the JTTF's rules are different than a typical police officers. They have more leniency in terms of what determines a criminal case, right?
No, not necessarily, and that's a whole nother argument that I'm not qualified to get into. I don't agree with that because they have a lot of
They have more
requirements.
freedom in terms of what they
Well, no, I can address your question in 3 different ways. One is that as we're looking at different vendors, one of the things that we're going to require any vendor that supplies us a body-worn camera is a database that has self-auditing. So anytime the video is viewed, there's an audit trail. Anytime it's looked at, we know who did it. Anytime it's released or made a copy of, we'll know who did it. When, timestamp, we're going to require that any vendor who applies to supply us with this, that any access to the database is password protected. You can't just log on and grab it. 2, that we're not going to allow portals to other agencies just to go in and look at what we have there. So if you had a specific request and you're investigating a crime, we'd look at it. 2 other points you made, and I think that they're very relevant, and we didn't have a place to put it on this PowerPoint, but I think the relevant to the discussion today is based specifically on some of the things you're saying. When we have video evidence and we know that officers are going out and contacting folks, one of the things that comes up constantly is racial profiling. Well, now, if we go to the body-worn cameras, we're going to actually have video evidence of what occurred, what happened in that. And so it's not a he said, she said. We as a community are going to gain from that. We're going to actually have a video record of what happened, what transpired there. I think that's a good place to go because sometimes things get spun up that we have one person that says something and they feel 100% that way and maybe it did happen, and we have another person who works for the Port Police Bureau that has a whole different opinion and they say this happened. And then as a community we're left with, well, what did happen, right? I think videos are going to answer that. And number 2, and I think this is really relevant to this discussion as well, there was a professor wrote a white paper, 2010 at Pitt Law, and you can Google it. On Google Scholar, you can find it. And what he believed and proposed, and I think is also true, is that body-worn cameras are going to protect people's Fourth Amendment rights. One of the things that happens oftentimes in court, and one of the points of discussion on whether evidence is admitted or not admitted, was the stop lawful. And what body-worn cameras are going to do is document that stop from the beginning to the end. The Oregon legislature spoke. They say they want that camera activated from the time the officer has probable cause to believe or even suspicion of a crime has occurred or is about to occur. So we're going to know, third party, unbiased, here's what happened. The officer saw this, they activated their camera, and then they went out on this. The other thing we're looking at with body-worn cameras is that many of them have what's called a pre-event recording or buffering system. So they not only record once you hit the button, they're actually on a continuous cycle, so they can give you up to 2 minutes before what happened. So they can give you the video. Usually we don't record audio, and that's usually a setting that's set by the local agency. 99% of them don't record the audio because, again, there's private conversation. So if I'm talking to my wife about our sick child at home, there's probably no public reason to have that recorded. But the second I hit that, any video that occurred 15 seconds or 30 seconds before I hit it is still going to be part of that record. It'll be part of that video evidence. So he believes, and I also do believe, this can make officers do a better job of making their stops completely lawful. I don't think they're out there intentionally violating rights, but I think occasionally they do. And sometimes it's just a position of where you stand on a sidewalk when you engage in conversation. But to the person walking down the street, the community that we serve, they are going to have a video record of that encounter. And when they say, and they go to court, no, I didn't freely stop. The officer said, I need your ID, and they stepped in front of me. We know a stop has pretty much occurred, and we'll have video evidence of that. So it's going to protect us, and I believe, and I wish I could quote the professor, but it's 2010 FIT law, white paper, body-worn cameras, and that's his whole premise. This is going to make a better society because we're going to be having a better record of what happened, and it's going to clear up a lot of miscommunication. And I think it's already happening. If you start watching what's being released now, there's a lot of he said, she said, we're releasing the video, and people are getting, here's what happened. And then if you even go back to Ferguson, we don't truly know what happened. We have an officer statement, we have some witness statements, and we have a dead man. But we don't all, nobody in this room was there, we don't know, right? But if there's a body-worn camera on, I think we have a better idea. We may not have the complete picture, but we'd have a better idea of what happened. And I think that's where body-worn cameras serve our whole community. It's going to give us a better idea of what happened. It is not a panacea. We still have to have police officers who work hard, who are ethical. We have to have community members who actually step forward. When you're talking about African-American men dying at a higher rate, 97% of the time when we get a victim identification, someone, a witness step forward and tells them what the suspect is, it's also African-American. It's 97%. We have over 180 GVRT, gang-related call-outs this year. That affects the African-American community heavily. And we investigate, put a lot of resources in that.
Speak up to what you just said about that, and then if I could, and I'm looking at the clock, and if it's another meeting, let me know when, because I'd like to speak to that. Go.
Go ahead.
Okay, when you're speaking about, to me, it's almost a statement that we get black on black crime and, you know, the blacks killing blacks. I hear it almost every day. And this is true. Once again, we're going to go to per capita. We could look at the history of why, and there's several things, and that's legitimate. And also when we look at, again, the numbers in per capita, those are not that are black on black, and when we're asking why, it's still being a death is a death, and the numbers do not match. So if we're going to look at it, like I said, I'm one of the anomaly, one of the last few original black people in North Central Albina. So if we're going to look at a comment like that, let's look at it to say, well, you know, well, it is the blacks killing blacks, and if it's the whites killing whites, and the whomever killing, the bottom line is what? It was death. And here my original question, and I will digress, is what is, if you can say, the general perspective of, and I know it's just from your perspective of what you're reading, throughout the United States in places that have received the body cameras from the police department, because I think that's very important for us to recognize. And I want to thank every last one of you who are here, who did attend police officer wise. It's almost scary to me, you know, it's almost intimidating to come in here, and I'm looking around here, we have the captain and almost more policemen than we do communities of concern and issue. So with that, I would like us to, just for the record, look at that statement and how we apply it, what it means, and ask us why. Because it's not quite as simple as that, and I wanted to say that it's almost unjust to put it out there, so I had to speak to that.
Well, I think it's a community issue, and obviously we haven't solved it, and we're still working on
Yes,
solving
and that's why I say I appreciate the
it.
dialogue.
But
and
it involves all
fairness
this. It can't just be a law enforcement solution to most of the problems.
Absolutely not.
The police are not going to solve all the problems in our community, and there's a
Absolutely
lot
not.
of different ones out there.
I agree.
And so, but I have to put it out there because it is a fact. And the fact is, that is occurring. The question is, how do we as a community solve that?
Okay, do you
And
have
it is
that
a
same,
community-
no, I am fair, and I don't mean to cut you. Do
No.
you have that same number for how many whites are killing whites statistically, like you just stated?
Yeah, it's predominantly the same.
Okay, then let's say that in that then, we just singled out, we have whites with the same, Latinas, once again, Asians, whomever it is. Because when we do single it out like that, again, that's why I spoke so passionately about it. And again, to be fair, I'm appreciating the dialogue because I would rather talk to you than to physically fight you or to yell and to scream or somebody get a gun when all we had to do is to start here. So sincerely from the heart, I want to thank you for that.
Okay. Go ahead, you had a question or a comment?
My question was, if this does pass, that you guys will be able to, or maybe not specifically, whoever is able to wear these cameras, will it be more leeway with at a specific crime scene, victims or witnesses be able to have cameras? Because through personal experience, I've been, in a hostile state with the officer, not wanting to record them, but I feel like I'm going to be on camera wherever I go. Is there going to be an issue if I can also record the events of?
No, you can record it as long as you're not creating interference.
Okay. I mean, if I'm specifically with the officer, is there an issue with the officer having their face on my camera?
Oh, no, not at all.
No.
That's my question.
For years now,
That's-
the officers are used to being video recorded.
And the ACLU has actually put out an app that actually does that for you. You can download the app. And they also went through the legislature this year, and they amended the interfering statute. They made a separate case for that to allow citizens to videotape officers. They were able to do that anyway from a series of court rulings, but they actually clarified that in statute.
Um,
Before I get you